have I'm sure a lot to cover tonight, and I am so pleased to introduce our speaker this evening, James Martiney. James earned his BA from biology from Princeton University and his PhD in experimental pathology from the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. He has over 30 years of experience teaching STEM-related graduate level, upper level, and intro level courses for science, pre-health careers, and non-science majors. James served for 14 years in the United States Navy Reserves Medical Service Corps, achieving the rank of lieutenant commander, where he trained to strategically prepare and respond to biological warfare events, global pandemics, and disaster preparedness. His military training includes fleet biological warfare agent detection for the Navy, environmental and preventative medicine personnel, and biological defense research directorate, and medical management of chemical and biological warfare injuries for the U.S. Navy, and chemical, biologic, radionuclear, explosive event war games exercises in the U.S. Navy. An interesting fact about James is while serving as a microbiologist with the U.S. Navy, he had to learn how to manipulate deadly pathogens such as anthrax and the Black Plague, all without doing himself in. So we are so glad that you were able to do that, and you're here tonight to teach us and share your information about vitamins, supplements, what they can and cannot do, and what we really need to fuel our bodies and our brains. So welcome, James. I'm so happy you're here.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.
One other thing
Yes.
is we will just talk about a little bit of housekeeping. We will be, if you have any questions throughout the talk, please put them in the chat. We will definitely have time for Q&A at the end, but we will probably not be interrupting him throughout the talk to answer those questions. So please, if there's anything that you are interested in learning, put your questions in the chat and we will get to them at the end.
Great. Thanks again for having me here, inviting. Let's see if technology works. There you go. Like I tell my students, just nod if you can see the PowerPoint. Yes, thank you. All right. So this is like training for the semester that starts in a couple of weeks. Anyway, again, thank you for having me here. Couple of things before we start. I'm going to provide Marion with the PowerPoint. So you want copies of the slides or whatever PDF format. They will be available at some point. And also the resources, the web links to like the papers and research that I'm showing. I'm also going to share those links with her. So they're going to be made available to you. All right. So I figured that what really we wanted to accomplish here today. And one slide, I'm already having technical issues. I have a pointer. There we go. Sorry about that. All right. So I always like to talk about the science a little bit before during the talk, not talking down, but sort of make it simple so you really understand what are we talking about. I'm not going to simply tell you what you should do, what you should not do. My goal is to inform you, and then you can figure out what you need and don't need, what you want to take and not to take. So we're going to spend just very few minutes understanding exactly what's a vitamin, what's a supplement, what do they have to do with our metabolism. Then the big question that I think a lot of you are interested in is, do we need external non-dietary sources of that? External, I mean like that stuff that you see on the screen, pills, or can we simply eat enough that we don't have to take extra pills or supplement? Do they actually work? Okay, you will be surprised, or maybe not, that a lot of them do not work at all, depending on the situation. Who should take them, and which ones you should take? So we're gonna be doing that towards the end. And then I want to finish with what I call a case study. And what that is, I'm going to talk about two products, and I'm going to guide you through my own decision making on how I determine if that supplement, that product Is it real? Does it really have a health benefit, or is it simply something made up by their marketing department? So that's how we're going to end. All right, so let's start with metabolism. Basically, that is what you eat, right? Now, I fully realized that uh, maybe this wasn't the right picture to put here. There's like a hot dog, pepperoni pizza, hamburger, French fries. The only green stuff is actually looks like guac. So Paul, you can pretend it's a lot healthier stuff there. But I want to make a point out here is that we eat energy. That's what we eat. We're eating energy. And then we go through chemical digestion, which means we take those starches, those carbohydrates, those fats, those proteins, and we chop them into little pieces. And then from there is where we get this molecule called ATP. You don't have to know what it means, but that's currency, that's money. That is also calories. Okay. So that is I like the analogy of money, currency, because you're going to take that money, you're going to take that ATP, you're going to take those calories and then use them. And you can look at the other little green arrow here for metabolism. You can move, you can generate heat, you can grow hair, not in my case anymore. You can do all sorts of things, but you need money. And that is what metabolism does. Okay. Now, here, what metabolism is shown is one big, thick green arrow. But if you really look at metabolism, this is what it looks like. Okay. So now I'm going to spend the next 3 hours going through every single line here. No, I know, don't worry. Okay. But what I want you to get from, and this is real, this is actually not, this is actually real biochemistry, is that each one of those lines that you cannot see, each one of those structures that you cannot see, and those arrows is one enzyme, one worker, one specific molecule doing a job. Okay. So keep that in mind as we go through the next couple of slides. All right. So why did I start with metabolism? Why did I start with enzymes? This is the analogy that I want you to have, the analogy that I'm giving you. A line factory. So each one of these people has one specific job in that factory. Those are the enzymes. You have one job and each job will be different. So each person there has a set of tools. Enzymes are proteins, and most proteins have, let's call it a basic set of tools to do chemistry. Okay. So they can do their job. So each enzyme or each worker has a tool, but once in a while, we all have experienced this. If you are the YI person, do it yourself. That sometimes you need a specific special tool to do a job. And now we finally get to what is a vitamin. A vitamin is one of those tools that some of those workers or enzymes need to do a job. Obviously, if you're missing that tool, you cannot do a job. So everything that you learn about vitamins, supplements, I want you to think they are tools, okay? So the question then becomes, do you need that tool or not, okay? All right, so one example, a historical example, as some of you may have heard, is scurvy. And that is a disease that was affecting sailors many, a lot of time, hundreds of years ago. After some time at sea, when they could not eat certain types of food, it was eventually fatal. You have all these sort of symptoms. There's a reason I'm showing you all this. And then in the late 18th century, there was some British doctors figure out that fruits like lemons cure scurvy. Here's a fresh basket of fruits. When they went out on their sailboats, they did not have any fresh fruit or they ran out of it. So they learned that they had to make stops and get um, fresh fruits so they didn't get this fatal disease. They had no clue what it was. There's no germ theory was basically just starting. There was no biochemistry, of course, no molecular biology. They had no clue what the magic ingredient was. But this was one of the first times that people figured out that there was something special in certain in certain types of food that you needed to stay alive. Okay. The source of that cure for scurvy wasn't discovered until the early 20th century, and they got their name vitamins. The prefix vita or vita, like curriculum vitae, your life, vitality, just means life. So when people start talking about vitamins, it simply meant stuff that you need to live. So to complete the story, basically what you had in the case of scurvy was vitamin C deficiency. And there's a reason I put that in red, because the key to understanding if you really need vitamins or supplements of different types is, can you detect a deficiency? So there was an enzyme, again, one of those workers was lacking the tool. The tool was vitamin C. So it could not make a protein called collagen. You probably heard of it. There's actually many different types of collagen. Um, excuse me. And then the person had symptoms. Okay. So the reason I also highlight symptoms is because one of the questions that you get all the time is, how do I know if I need a certain vitamin or supplement? And you have to look for those symptoms. You have to look for that deficiency. So that was, vitamins are very straightforward. What about supplements? Okay. That is actually a relatively modern word. A long time ago, supplement simply means that you were add something that you added. Again, the word deficiency, something was deficient, so you actually made it, um, uh, you cured the deficiency by adding the supplement. Okay. So if you had anemia, meaning a shortage of iron, then you took iron and you fixed that deficiency. All right. But then this thing of dietary supplements started to show up about 25 to 30 years ago. And here's a paper. Again, I said I'm gonna provide all the links, separate document. But the National Library of Medicine, this is free. You don't need a .edu account. You don't have to pay for it, um, and it has a ton of uh, uh, scientific, evidence-based, peer-reviewed research, and so on. You're gonna see several examples. You can buy these books, or you can download free PDF versions. So it's a good place to go and look for research. Anyway, so what is the reason I picked this one, even though it's an old paper, is because it talks about how in 1997 there were about 600 supplement manufacturers and there are about 4,000 products. And in the year 2000, that's like more than 20 years ago, there were already close to 30,000 different supplements and about 1,000 new products per year. And that's 20 years ago. Right now, we have literally almost 100,000 different types of supplements. So the question is, we have what, 20 vitamins, depends how you count them. Why we ended up with close to 100,000 different supplement products? And the answer is that anything can be marketed as a supplement. Okay. So when I hate that word supplement in this context. So what I want you to try to do is when you see the word supplement, immediately ask yourself, what type? Is it a mineral? Is it a metal? Is it, what is it? Okay. They're not, it's a big umbrella and literally anything can be marketed as a supplement. So let's see how we got there. Again, I think this is sort of important to understand the difference between vitamins, supplements, and you can see what I'm doing. Okay. And then like medicines, right? There was this act in 1990 that allowed companies to quote health claims, like one of my favorites, boost the immune system. Everything boosts the immune system, right? Without showing efficacy. Efficacy is a very important concept to understand. What this means is that you have to show that the product has a beneficial effect. You need a clinical trial, okay? You cannot simply say, this is good for your heart. In a clinical trial, you have to say this medicine will decrease blood pressure by 20% on this specific population. So what happened is that this allowed the people from running those companies to have any health claims. That's why you read things like, every orange juice container will say boost the immune system or boost your mental acuity or whatever. Those claims are done without the benefit of any clinical trials. There's no data that supports those claims. Then this came into effect, the DSHEA of 1994. And basically, this was a quote unquote regulation of supplements. And this is still the law up to now. anything can be labeled as a supplement as long as you don't market it as a whole meal. In other words, as long as you don't say that you can take this instead of a lunch, and that's it. Okay, so again, anything can be a supplement. The other thing is that you have to show that your product was safe. You did not have to show that it worked, but you have to show that it was safe. But you're not required to show how you determined that it was safe. Okay, so that's another problem with the supplements. The FDA, Federal Drug Administration, has no authority to remove the product from the marketplace. I'm sure you hear once in a while that there's a E. coli contamination of, spinach or whatever, and it has to be pulled out. It has to be recalled from the market. If there's a problem with a supplement, the FDA can make recommendations and suggestions, but has no legal authority to remove that from the marketplace. So what that means, that you can basically market almost anything, any way you want, without giving any inside information. And I'm gonna judge why this is going on. I'm just gonna put them down there for a few seconds. Hopefully you can read it. And that may give you a clue as to why things are what they are. Okay. And yeah, that's not a typo, 165 billion with a B, market, global market. All right. So not very good news, but this is, I went into this so you understand that you have to be extra careful, extra diligent when doing your research, when you're looking into supplements, especially health supplements. All right, so do you really need them? Okay, so that's the question. That's why you're here. So now you can imagine a drum roll. Here's my answer. You don't know. Okay. Now, the reason I put that there is because it depends. It depends on your situation. And we're going to get into that next. Okay. But probably not. For a lot of people, they don't require to take vitamins and supplements. And from now on, the rest of tonight's talk, when I say taking vitamins and supplements, I'm talking pills from a bottle. Okay. Because the question that's on your mind right now is, okay, why I don't have to take, maybe I don't have to take any pills, any vitamins, any supplements. And the answer should be no surprise. If you have a balanced diet, if you have a varied diet, I'm not going to go through all the food groups and all the vitamins. You can have a picture like this for things like magnesium, zinc, and so on. If you have a varied and balanced diet, you may not need to take supplements. And we're going to look at some of the exceptions. Couple other reasons you may want to eat what you need to take instead of taking a pill. There's been a lot of research, a lot of studies that have shown that supplements cannot replicate the health benefits of whole foods. Now, whole foods, I don't mean the store down Route 1. I'm talking like the full orange, And the reason has to do with a concept called bioavailability. I don't have time to explain it today, but suffice it to say that everything that you can think about, vitamins, metals like magnesium, iron, selenium, all that stuff, is better to eat it. It's more stable, more available to your body than if you simply take it as a pill. Also, whole foods are complex. Instead of taking a vitamin C pill, if you simply eat an orange, you also get beta carotene, calcium, and other nutrients. And again, this is evidence. This is not just me saying stuff. This is evidence-based, scientific studies, research-based, and so on. Okay, so at this point, you're probably saying, okay, I'm not deficient. I don't think I'm deficient on vitamins or supplements, but if I take them, I'm gonna be even healthier. I call that the 2 × 2 Tylenol thing. People say, okay, if I take 2 Tylenol, my headache goes away in an hour. If I take 4, it's gonna go away in 30 minutes. Okay, so people think that if they take more, you become healthier. No, actually. Here's a couple of research papers. Again, I'll provide the links. This is from a scientific journal, and I'm quoting directly from the conclusions of this study. And they show it was a large-scale trial. We're talking thousands of people. No overall benefit. They were taking multivitamin and mineral again, zinc, stuff like that. There was no benefit in terms of health benefits. And in some cases, some had an increased risk of cancers. Okay. So just because you're taking them this is not water. This is not something that if you take a lot of it, is not going to have detrimental effects. Here's another one from the British Medical Journal, which is one of the top journals in Europe, medical journals in Europe. And again, just a quote directly from the conclusions of the papers. And all the papers that I'm showing you, again, you can access them. I'll provide the links, and they are all summary or review papers. They're not individual studies, so they're approachable. You can work through it and read them. Um, this one concluded the same thing, and again, I highlight that there was no support on taking supplements except people without clinical nutritional deficiency. Again, that word deficiency. Okay, so you kind of have an idea of what I'm getting at right now. Is that if you're okay, if you're not deficient, you don't have to take anything. All right, so, but you really want to take those vitamins. You really want to take those supplements. They're actually going to do no harm. Again, the answer is probably not. Sorry, they may give you harm. Again, another paper from the scientific research world. And in this case, it was a large study, people taking vitamins E, A, C, and D, and folic acid. And they found that they were not only effective, but also they were harmful to the health. And again, I'm quoting directly from the paper. That's why the statements are in quotes, except those people that had deficient. So the same thread is going through all these papers. If you're not deficient, you may not have to take it. Here's another one, another review paper. This was actually a huge, it was the NIH, the National Institute of Health, uh, did a huge study on this subject some years ago. It was published in the Annals of Internal Medicine, again, one of the top medical research journals in the United States. We're talking about 27,000 people being followed over a 6-year period. And they were looking at what they were eating, what dietary supplements they were using, mortality, and other disease parameters. And what was really interesting here, number one, is that they were it was the first big paper that showed that if you take a lot of in excess a lot of certain vitamins and supplements, actually that is harmful to your health. Okay, things like iron, certain types of vitamins, you take a lot of them, actually that can be harmful and give you symptoms. Harmful means that the doctors, again, this is a clinical study, a cohort study. You're going to the doctor, you're going to the team, and they're measuring. It will be like taking an annual physical, but every month or so. So they're following a lot of medical variables here. And some of the variables start to go down as you're taking supplements in excess. And this is really interesting too. Anybody that had a mortality benefit, meaning they did not die, as you know, I shouldn't be laughing when I talk about this. That you don't, they had a longer lifespan. Associated with uptake or intake of vitamin A, K, and a whole bunch of other things, is because they ate it, food consumption, not because they were taking pills. So those people who derive benefits over the 6-year period, again, measurable health benefits during a clinical study, it was because they were eating the necessary supplements and vitamins. They were not taking pills. All right, so by this point, you're probably asking, okay, any reason I should be taking vitamins or supplements? The answer is, of course, yes. So now we're going to look into the situations in which, so different categories in which you will need to take vitamins or supplements. Here in the United States, our problem in terms of food is actually obesity, too much food. But there's still way too many people who have food insecurity. They go hungry, especially kids. If you have from a newborn to 4 or 5 years of age, they are vitamin deficient. That will affect their neurological development, which means that they're not going to do well in school. They're going to have all sorts of cognition issues and so on. This one actually works. Pregnancy, taking folate or folic acid, it means the same thing. That actually have been shown by clinical studies that actually works. Another one is if you're vegan, um, you need to have a supply or a source of vitamin B12, D, and calcium because you're not going to be getting enough of those in your diet. Um, if you're older than 50, there's many that maybe you should be taking, and we're going to talk about that one in a couple of slides. If you're a woman, calcium and iron, those are also in the must category. So yes, there's certain vitamins and supplements that you should be taking. If you have a malabsorption condition, and I think that later in the year, we're going to have a talk on starch-related diseases like Crohn's disease, celiac disease, and so on. If you have any of these, you may have to take vitamins or supplements. I'm talking the pills, not just because you can't absorb what you need in order for those workers, for those enzymes to do their job. And then certain types of cancer and so on. I always, many times I get asked, I have this condition or that condition. What should I take? How much? Um, at that point, it's like a medicine. Check with your primary medical provider before you start taking a vitamin or a supplement. Okay. Especially if you have any of these conditions. All right. So I think many of us are vintage. We get better with age. So if you're above the age of 50, what should we be taking? The first thing I mentioned is actually, what should I eat? Okay, again, it's always better to eat it than to take the pill. And there's a long list. I'm not gonna go through the list. Again, you're gonna have copies of this, but if you simply glance of it, you're gonna see that again, a varied diet, a balanced diet. Here you have eggs, leafy vegetables, vegetable oils, nuts, fish. You're going to be able to get everything that you need. Also, as you go through the list, you're going to see that there's plenty of choices for people who don't eat meat. Okay. So again, varied and balanced diet is the key. The ones in red, like vitamin B12, calcium, and vitamin D, those are the ones that we are most likely to need little pill, okay? A supplement, a vitamin, because we're not going to be able to eat enough. Vitamin D is one of those that a lot of us, including myself, we are vitamin D deficient, and it's very hard to eat enough food that contains vitamin D to bring your levels up. So I take my vitamin D supplement. Last one here is the one that you should not be eating. That's sodium, salt. Okay, a lot of people don't realize that the food as it is has actually a lot of sodium already in it. Okay, especially if you have cardiovascular issues, high blood pressure, definitely you should avoid adding salt to your meals. Okay, again, you're gonna have access to this and you can look at it in more detail, and I'm also gonna provide you a link that goes into either more details of more types of foods that contain these vitamins and supplements. So the next question is, okay, I know now that I should be eating certain things, but how do I know if I'm deficient on that? And this is the hard part of deciding if you need a vitamin or a supplement. Because those of us who go to our, annual physical, you don't get a table of how much magnesium you have in your body. We get vitamin D because that's easy to test, but nobody gets a vitamin A panel, how much vitamin A you have and so on. So one of the reasons that I gave you that scurvy example to begin the talk is you have to sometimes look for the symptoms that you're missing something. And I just listed here a few. Again, don't memorize them. There's no quiz. There's a couple of things to note here. There could be many reasons you have these symptoms. Extreme hair loss, not this type, that took a while to happen. But actually, I know somebody who she is vegan, and she came to me because she had extreme hair loss, and also her platelet count was down, and that sort of triggered my brain, and I said, go to your doctor, endocrinologist or whoever, metabolic MD, a specialist, and get a panel of done. You need a specialized blood testing. And she was deficient in a vitamin and a couple of nutrients. Okay. So here's another set of common signs of nutrient deficiency. Again, I'm not going to go over them. You can look at them at your leisure. But for example, poor night vision is one of the classic ones, and that's connected to vitamin A deficiency. Um, so, for example, if you're going to a room, light is on, indoor room, it's night, okay? Shut off the light. If all of a sudden everything's completely black and it takes a long time for you to be able to start to see things, that is what poor night vision means, okay? But the key here is it's very hard to know if you're deficient unless you have a symptoms because they're not part of a normal, shouldn't say normal, of a standardized annual physical exam. You can be proactive again. You're vegan, you know by definition, because of what you're eating, that you are going to be missing B12 and a couple of vitamins and so on, and also some amino acids. So you can be proactive and add those to your diet because you in the pills because you're not eating them. But normally it's very hard to know if you're deficient. Um, all right, so you want to maybe be proactive. You're in the vintage category. You're told by your doctor to take X amount of something. How do you know how much to take? Okay. Rule number one, don't believe the bottles. Don't believe the marketing. They always tell you to eat more because they want to sell more pills. Remember, they don't have to show efficacy. They can say anything. So you go to here, the Dietary Guidelines for Americans. That's a website. Again, I'll provide you the link. It has a downloadable PDF and also a whole bunch of resources that you can really get into. Okay. So when you hear in the news that the government changed the vitamin C requirements to so many milligrams per day, this is where it comes from. And every 5 years, it's reviewed. I also recommend this click in here, professional resources. They have a lot of good information, all evidence-based. I love that phrase, evidence-based. Everybody say it, evidence-based. I'm just kidding. Okay. Guiding you in an intelligent way as to what to eat, what not to eat, and so on. So it's a great website, great place to go to look for information. All right. Up to now, we have gone through the basics of what are vitamins, what are supplements. I gave you a lot of, I don't want to call it negative, but a lot of, Grinch sort of information that maybe you should not be taking as much or whatever. But I also hopefully give you some guidelines as to who, what you should be taking under certain circumstances. So I figured that the best thing to do to finish is to go through, I call them case studies. I'm going to be looking at a couple of products, and they actually were sent to me via Marion from people that were interested in whatever those products worked or not. So I'll guide you through the way I do it, and hopefully that will help you make better choices. So the first one that I was asked about was this compound, BioCiden. And okay, never heard of it. So went to the website to get a little bit of an idea, and that's what it is. It's all these botanicals and natural solutions. Okay, for our time, I like that. It does apparently miracles, removes biofilms and uh, complex health and simplicity. I like that. Microbes matter most. I'm a microbiologist, so I always get excited when I read that. So it all sounded good, right? So at this point, I shut off the website and I go and do my research. The same type of research that I showed you before. I go to PubMed, which is the abbreviation for the National Library of Science or of the National Library of Medicine, that free resource from the National Institutes of Health. And I did a search for um, peer review science evidence papers on this botanical product. So I'm going to show you next the list of all the peer review papers, efficacy data. Again, efficacy means does it work? and any clinical trials regarding that product. So here's the list. Nothing. It just, I don't know if you remember the Simpsons episode in which he just goes into the bushes. I'm dating myself when I said that. But hey, we're all vintage. There was nothing, literally nothing. Okay. I did find in the clinic, this is another free website, again, from the National Library of Medicine, clinicaltrials.gov. All clinical trials have to be uploaded, the results, the research, etc., into this website. Again, you don't need to pay. You don't need a .edu email address. So I found, here it is, BioCiden. Okay. I found this person in the website. Is somebody who actually works there. And what's really interesting is on the first slide that I show you, the ones in which they're bragging about biofilms and all this stuff, but the clinical trial is about small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is what you do in research, medical research. Small part of a problem, that's what you do your trial on, okay? All right, so then I click and here are the details of the trial. 35 participants. Now, I just show you data from a cohort study with 27,000. I mean, that's on the high side. But you can think, ask yourself, do you think that results from 35 people will give meaningful results? Okay. But the other thing that I look at, which basically is a big red flag, is here. Okay. It's a weird term, masking. But I think most of you have heard the term double-blind study. Means that neither the doctor nor the patient knows if you're getting that medicine or you're getting a placebo. That way you avoid bias. Okay, that is the standard of clinical trials and research. Okay, masking, none, open label. So they know they're taking that supplement. Okay, so that's a big red flag to me. All right, so estimated completion date, it was here. So I figured, well, the 35 people should be done. It's only 35 of them. So look around and recruitment status unknown. This is all like just fake. I mean, not fake. They just uploaded information. They never recruited anyone. They never did anything. By the way, again, this is the law. Doesn't matter if it's a small company or a large pharmaceutical company or a consortium of hospitals, any clinical trial gets a unique identifier number. Okay. So if you're interested to know if there are any clinical trials on Crohn's disease or whatever, you can go to that website, you can search, and you can follow what's going on. Okay. So there's absolutely no data to show anything that this product can do. Okay. But so I went back to their website and here's what they claim they do. Okay. Cure bacteria, parasites, Lyme disease, mold, viruses. I mean, even like autism. I mean, it's just so many, many, many red flags here. But I'm gonna tell you two or three that I always look for. Okay, and I have to give you a 60-second microbiology lesson. When you think about viruses, and going back to that slide that I showed you about metabolism, all those arrows and all that stuff, viruses have no metabolism. They use your metabolism. They infect your cells and use your metabolism. Okay, that's where the computer viruses got their name from. They insert into your cells, they take over your metabolism. Okay, here bacteria, they have a different type of metabolism that we do. In science, we call them prokaryotes. And some of their metabolism is different enough that we can use antibiotics that kill bacteria but don't kill us. Okay. And then we have molds and parasites. They're more advanced type of organisms. We call them eukaryotes, and they have yet a different type of metabolism closer to us. So when I see anything that tells me that a product can have an effect on 3 different types of metabolism, that's a big red flag. Okay, nothing should work on bacteria, viruses, and molds. Okay, that just simply cannot happen. Okay, something else that to me was a red flag, even if I did not know a lot of the underlying science is this one: mental health disorders and autism. Um, this is your brain gets mapped a different way in autism. That's been shown. There's nothing that can alter miswiring of your brain. Okay. There's nothing you can take. Okay. So that's a big one for me. So anytime you see something like mental acuity increases cognition, my favorite, immune boosting, look, autoimmune diseases, there's like dozens of autoimmune diseases. Each one has a different way to work that it works. Okay. Um, and this is a very minor one, but it bugs me as a microbiologist. This is a typo. Okay. So whoever wrote this even got the name of some of the organisms wrong. So big red flag. So I look for, are you making too many claims, too many organisms? I look for very broad claims. I look for those, I call them the automatic red flags: immune boosting, mental acuity, all those phrases that people like. Um, so by this point, I'm like ready to like close shop. And then this is from their website. I didn't have to dig into anywhere else. This is not some, it's actually on their website. So then I look at the fine print, the bottom of that page, and I'm going to share with you the link so you can actually see the PDF document yourself. So this is what it said. I'll give you a few seconds to read it. No medical claims are implying for any nutritional supplements after they tell you all this, okay? And then on page two is about more clinical information, more times in which you should use it. There was a really fine print. There it is. You can't read it. That's the actual size of the fine print in the website. So let me make it a little bigger. That's a real size. Check out the last line. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. And look at this. So I just save you some money. And when I usually teach my students, I tell them they keep half, give me half to me. They never do that anyway. But that's the sequence that I use. All right, so we're almost at time. So let me very quickly finish with a good story. And that is turmeric or curcumin, which is the active ingredient. I'm sure many of you have heard of this. It's used in, it's a spice, it's used in foods. And I did the same thing. I went to the National Library of Medicine, did a search, and there's literally more than 100 papers on this. Okay. This is a relatively recent one. Again, it's a review paper. If you're interested in this topic and this particular supplement, that's what you do. You can search for, I searched for turmeric and I got this. This is a review paper that gives you all the information. This is like 40 pages long of anything you want to know about that particular item, okay, particular product. There are many clinical trials. I show you how to look for clinical trials, but many of them have been published because the results have been achieved. And they address both the safety and, again, that word efficacy. It works. Okay. There's more clinical trials in progress. Clinical trials are super expensive. Okay. So the fact that there are even more clinical trials in progress means that whatever is the pharmaceutical or biotechnology company behind the clinical trials, they think they're going to get their money back because this stuff works. Another thing, and I just told you that for me, a red flag is when you have this broad, again, immune boosting. These studies were looking at very specific diseases and conditions. Again, I'm not going to go through the list, but if they're being specific, that means they're zeroing in into for a specific research. So in this case, yes, it's a good thing. It does work. It does work as intended. Last thing I'm going to say is, as usual, ask your doctor or primary care provider for any dosing instructions. The one, an item, a topic I didn't get into is that many of the supplements, again, they're tools. They're used by enzymes. And if you're taking some of them, it's just like some medicines, you cannot take one if you're taking the other one and so on. There's many contraindications if you are taking certain types of medications. So certain types of vitamin and supplements can actually make your medical condition worse depending on what medicine you're taking. So yes, it works, but always check with your primary care provider first. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think you gave us a lot of food for thought.
No
And
pun intended.
I know, well, pun intended. So let's if anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat. Let's see what we have right now. So somebody asked, well, this is probably not something you can ask or answer very specifically, but what does an irregular heartbeat indicate?
Irregular heartbeat means that, I mean, we all have seen either yourself or in TV shows the doom of the AKG. So basically, irregular heartbeat is that it's going good, it's not doing what it's supposed to do. The way you feel it is usually you feel your heart racing. That's what people usually say. I feel my heart racing, like tachycardia. It could be many reasons that may be happening. And that's one of those that if you feel anything like that, not after you're running 10 miles, but just sitting down, you feel your heart rate, you definitely want to go to your primary care provider sooner rather than later. But that's what it means
So like an
clinically.
AFib or an A flutter.
Yeah, tachycardia, fibrillation, yeah, exactly, all of that.
Okay. Um, we often hear the phrase "eat on a daily basis." So for actually eating your supplements, right? If dairy and protein, etc., isn't always eaten daily, maybe every other day, would a supplement be necessary?
Yeah, I'm reading that question. That's an awesome question, and it will take me like 15 minutes to answer because that has to do with bioavailability and storage. So I'll try to give you the 30-second answer. Um, any you know how if you have an infection, you go to the doctor and it tells you take this antibiotic every 4 hours, and a different medicine they tell you take it once a day and so on. That has to do with the balance of how fast that medicine dissolves, gets into your blood, and goes to where it's needed. Okay. Food, sugars, vitamins, supplements are no different. Okay. And again, that's the concept of bioavailability and pharmacology and pharmacokinetics and so on. So that's me trying very hard not to answer the question directly because I don't have an answer. Um, but the one thing to keep in mind is that we only can store for a rainy day things made out of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, carbohydrates, right? We eat too much pasta, we put it as fat. If you eat 2 grams of vitamin C, you take 2 grams of vitamin C, which is an urban myth. It doesn't do anything actually. You're gonna go to the bathroom and 1.998 of those grams are gonna come out. We don't store some of those supplements. That's why taking too much of it, actually, one of the bad health outcomes is you overworking your kidneys with that. So yeah, unless you have a measurable deficiency, you don't have to take. I mean, if I forget to take my vitamin D supplement, I'm not going to like turn into a plant or anything the next day. It's a process. You have to build up the levels. That's another thing that if you're, for example, deficient in fill in the blank nutrient, taking 3 pills or taking a supplement or eating fruits for a week is not going to bring your levels up. It takes a while to go back to those normal levels. So, all right, sorry that I talked so long.
No, that's let's see. We often hear that our soil is depleted and that an apple today is not as nutritious as an apple was in the 1950s. Does this increase our need for supplements?
That's another great question. Another 15-minute answer that I'll try to do in 45 seconds. We should keep track of this and put little blogs or something about the
Sure,
answers.
sure, absolutely.
Um, the reason this is such an exciting question, as weird as this sounds, and it excites me to talk about this, is that uh, some of you may have heard of mono agriculture, that you keep inbreeding or modifying your foods to the point that there's no variation in the species. And that we call that artificial selection in genetics. And the reason that's been done is not so it can have more nutrients. There's some exceptions to this, like the famous golden rice, for example. But so you can take that orange from California, put it in a freezer truck, drive it 2 weeks to us here in New Jersey, then goes into ShopRite and it still looks orange. Okay. So that is the difference between food back then and now. That a lot of that artificial selection is not done to increase nutrition, is to increase shelf life, you know? So does that mean you need more supplements? Again, it depends, whatever you have to then measure it. But it's a great question. I'm gonna be quiet, otherwise I'll go on for another 10 minutes.
No, we'll have you back. Okay. Let's see. I've been taking glucosamine, chondroitin for joint pain. I'm going to look at this more critically. Any thoughts about
Yeah,
this
I
supplement?
see that question. I have this is I think I have the emoji. No, there's only a thumbs up. This one I go like this. Actually, the main company that used to sell the glucosamine chondroitin supplements got taken to court and had to give money back. But let me tell you why it doesn't work. Instead of just telling you that it doesn't work, I shouldn't have done that. It actually goes back to the first slide that I show you. You eat polymers. You eat poly, many, merged numbers. So you eat starch, you eat a protein, you eat long things. And then during chemical digestion, you break them down into the subunits. If you want to make more collagen, then you take those amino acids and those workers, those enzymes, they make new collagen. They take those monomers, one, and they put them together and create collagen. You cannot eat collagen and then the collagen stays intact and then goes to your joints. It doesn't work that way. So glucosamine chondroitin is a component that is found in certain tissues in joints. And the problem, the reason that supplement does not work, is that you digest it, you break it down. It doesn't just go to your knee. So anytime you think, again, bioavailability, when you're thinking of taking polymers, um, like all those nitrogen containing compounds that GNC sells, that people take those powders and they think goes to your muscles. There's nothing here, but let's pretend there's something here, right? You can't eat those powders and then have bigger muscles. You digest them. Okay. Again, I'm sorry that I'm talking so much about this, but this is another great question. So that one definitely doesn't work, but you can, do your own research.
So where would you find that that those nutrients in food?
Unfortunately, that's one of those that as you get vintage and you lose, or maybe you had an accident or a sports injury when you were 18 and made some scar tissue, there's some leftover inflammation. I'm sure most of us know that if you had an injury in your left knee when you're 20, by the age of 40, you can tell the weather because you get the pain there. So that's one of those that you really cannot put any, short of some surgery, you really can't make it up.
So if you're eating foods that are less inflammatory overall, that might be beneficial or
It
not
it
when it
it
comes
again, it
to
depends,
something.
which
Yeah,
is
okay.
not an answer you're like,
Yeah, right. No, it isn't it, but it's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Inflammation is another one of those topics that I actually used to give a whole class, semester-long class on inflammation. Don't worry, I won't start.
No, we could do
Um,
another one.
the big one there is where, okay? And
Okay.
the thing what I tell anytime somebody brings joint joint pains and inflammation, I always say the same thing. When you take anti-inflammatories, whatever it's Aleve or food or whatever, you're not doing anything to the underlying damage that you have. So you have to be careful that you don't take your anti-inflammatories and now I'm gonna bike for 10 miles because my knee's fine. You're just blunting your immune system response to the damage that includes pain. Okay. So one of the worst things that I see done is, especially high school kids or even middle school kids, they have a sports injury and then they get massive anti-inflammatory dosages so they can play the next game.
I
And you're
know.
basically destroying that kid's joint. So
Okay. Okay. So people are asking for a source of valid information. I was going to say consumerlab.com, and somebody mentioned, let's see, where did they go? Oh, where'd it go?
I always,
Examine.com. So
yeah,
Consumer Lab was one of the
yeah.
sources that
I have
I
heard of consumer. Yeah, I have heard of that one. I'll tell you a trick. I it's not a trick. It's a hint, a tip, not a trick. Um, all those websites, if they're reputable, what they're doing is kind of translating what research papers have been published and say. So what I do when I read or hear in the news about fill in the blank, oh, interesting. Then I go and search it on the National Library of Medicine, and I actually look at the original paper. So as you saw in my examples, the BioCiden were saying all these things, but there was nothing. But for the other one, there was a lot of paper. So um, Consumer Reports depends on what they're talking about. That's another one. Um, but the one thing about the National Institute of Health, NIH.gov, I just gonna put that in the chat box. NIH.gov, easy to remember. Um, there's I don't know, there are up to like 30 something institutes, and there's actually one for nutrition. And the way the institutes are set up is that you have information for the professionals, but also information for the lay people. So you can go to the National Institute of Health, click on, for example, there's one on like inflammatory bowel disease, and we explain things to you, not as you were a doctor or a practitioner or a researcher, but just a lay person. So that's a good source of information.
okay. Dr. Yang, I know you said you had a question. Do you want to ask your question?
Yes, I'm sorry I missed the first part of the meeting, but I like the second part. Jim talked about some of the supplements that using BioCiden as an example and curcumin as a positive example. I would like to caution everyone that even for curcumin, there's still a lot of things that seems to be over. I'm in tea research. Tea and curcumin was basically doing side by side in meetings. We all know the people. We all know these people, and probably in terms of number of publications, probably same numbers. Maybe there are more papers on tea. There's a bias in the publication. And some people really want to publish the results, and the editors of journals like it. If they to boost up and interpret really in a positive way, even Science and Nature is that way. I know Nature is that way. And the review article is, again, there are two type of review articles. One is some review article, very thoughtful and really looked at it critically. Others just copying the things and just boost up the thing. So, for example, curcumin, the problem with curcumin is that it's bioavailability issue. Mm-hmm. For example, in animal models, it works in colon cancer prevention, but doesn't work on lung cancer prevention. And even in colon cancer prevention, at the Cancer Institute in New Jersey, that one of my close colleagues did a human study, put a lot of effort to it, turned out to be negative. So that is something we need to know about it. And for people, many of the so-called bioactive compounds, phytochemicals, and those compounds, actually, the best way is to eat a plant-based food. You get it from the food. I think it's probably better. If you put them into an anti-inflammatory food and so on, depending on the situation. For example, in my laboratory, we can use the, for example, T polyphenols to anti-inflammation in the colon. But if we do the experiment differently, when there's already colon, you give them polyphenols, it stimulates the colon. It's not. So those are very tricky issues. And I would say people like drink tea, you drink the tea. And there's human data showing that would lower their deaths from cardiovascular diseases and total deaths. That's the type of data I would believe in.
Yeah,
So
I mean, it like I was saying, it has to be something very specific. So when you read in a label or a website that this is good against cancer. Which type, which conditions, which stage. If it's just something general, that I just keep on moving. Sorry, Marian, I interrupted you.
Oh, no, not at all, not at all. No, so
Yeah.
Dr. Yang is also a member of our scientific advisory committee, and he has done significant research on the effects of tea on our health. And I know that, one of the things that we know is that how you feel is data. And although we may not see the research supporting what these, some claims are, if it makes you feel better, right? Like, drink your tea. But if and this is when it comes to food as supplements. So, I talk to people often about food being your supplement. Drink that tea,
Yeah.
eat those canned oysters, eat those sardines, eat those foods that have those nutrients in them. I just learned about stinging nettle having calcium, magnesium, and potassium. I was like, what? Like, what? Like, I can drink my supplement and it's not a chemical? So, these are things that we want to share with everybody, that, your nutrients are best found in your foods. And if you're looking for those nutrients in your vitamins and your supplements, be careful. Be really careful and see if what it's doing is actually fueling you. It might be doing nothing, but you want to make sure that it's not doing harm. So I know there was one other question. We'll finish it really quick
Sarah
about
is asking.
collagen. About
Sorry,
collagen. What's about like, do collagen shots work?
are they for the lips?
I don't
Actually,
know.
collagen is what we call a structural protein, which means is a very tough. I'm going like this because it looks actually like a rope with 3 units kind of intertwined. That's what we call it, a structural protein. It's formed parts of structures like your tendons and so on. There's many different types of collagen. One of the reasons that once you lose your collagen, it's hard to get it back is because those tissues that are rich in collagen have very few cells, again, like your tendons and so on. So if you have a condition that you have lost some of that connective tissue, some of that collagen, the collagen shots may work because you're putting basically like foam, like protein to cushion a little bit. When you have 2 bones, for example, so they don't grind bone against bone. So it depends where you're getting them. I mean, I wouldn't get them at a spa or something. But yeah, collagen shots may work medically, but it's kind of like last case scenario. And I think Sarah posted how we can find the supplement vitamin brands that are actually reputable. Actually, that was one of the slides that I took because we're going to run out of time. But that NIH study that I showed you, that big cohort story, we're also looking at different brands of vitamins. And they found 2 things that were fascinating. Number one is many of them they actually took the pills and they did just basic chemistry and biochemistry to see what they contain. And it was like all over the map. There was one brand that they added, oh, now this one is with zinc. Both bottles had zinc in them, but the one that said plus zinc cost like $3 more. So they were all over the place. Some of them, Dr. Yang mentioned again, bioavailability. Some of them were put in a form that you could take all the pills that you could go like this and empty the bottle, and nothing was going to be available. I mean, it was not going to get dissolved and then absorbed by your intestines. But there were 2 brands, and again, I don't have any stock on any of them, that actually were shown to at least contain what they say they were contain in the labels. And one, surprisingly enough, I shouldn't say that, the Kirkland brand, the Costco brand of, and the other one is Puritan Pride. Did I say that correctly? Puritan Pride? I'll type it. That's a mail order company.
Okay.
So they're again, some of the stuff that they sell may not have efficacy, but at least it is what they're telling you that it is. If you want to know who was the worst by far, that was GNC. Hopefully nobody works there. Otherwise,
Well,
I'll get into trouble.
no, we're here to inform. We're here to
Where's
inform.
I need a no judgment sticker.
I
or
know,
something.
exactly.
Sorry.
I'm blurred, but yeah,
So,
they're non-judgment. Big, absolutely. So
yeah.
yeah, and that's the thing. It's, we want people to understand what it is you're putting in your body. So this has been absolutely wonderful, informative. We could go on for another hour. Somebody said we'll take a whole class on inflammation. So
I can do that.
I know, I know. So we'll see what, we'll have to tee up what you're going to talk about next. We have several other programs that we're scheduling over the fall. Dr. Martiney will be back with us again. He has offered to provide a number of different programs for us. Dr. Yang also has delivered programs. We're hoping to have him come back soon as well, and many of our other members of our scientific advisory committee. I'm just trying to help you to filter through, what is valid, and what are claims that don't hold true. So what we know is that if you can, as much as you can vary the foods and whole foods in your diet, you're going to be more likely to get the nutrients that you need. You might need a tin of smoked oysters every now and then to get you your zinc or some other way. But look to your food, your fruits and your nuts and your seeds that really can pack a lot of those that nutritional value. And of course, your plants are giving you fiber. So thank you for joining us tonight. We will be recording this, and we'll send out the link to everybody. Please share it with people far and wide, as we want to share information. And if you found this to be helpful and are able to donate to us so that we can continue our work, we appreciate that as well. And we will hopefully see you soon. And thank you so much, James, for being here tonight and sharing all of this amazing geeky information.
Oh, you're welcome. It was awesome, and the questions were amazing. I wish my
Yes.
students asked questions like that.
Yeah. So if anybody has any questions after the
Yes.
fact, please email them to us. And we're going to be creating some blog posts. When we see that there's a topic that people are really interested in, we're going to address that whenever we can. But thank you for joining us tonight, and enjoy the rest of your summer. And we hope to see you soon.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Have a good night.